Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Demai, Perek Hey, Halacha Beis, and Halacha Gimel. We're going to be learning today Daf Mem Dalid. We left off on Daf Mem Dalid, Amud Aleph, 9 lines from the top of the Amud by the dot, At Kedoim, almost the middle of the Amud. So let's quickly review the last sugya that we learned on Daf Mem Gimel. We introduced, first of all, the Braisa that says regarding Meiser, which is Dafke, not like Truma, Truma Gedoyla must be given Mei Oimed. In other words, Truma Gedoyla, when the Chazal said that an average person should give 1 from 50 or 2%, Dafke not exactly 2%. Why? We'll learn later. But Dafke not, it has to be Mei Oimed. In contrast to that, Meiser Ishain, Meiser men ha-Meiser, which is Trumas Meiser, and Meiser Sheni, and Meiser Ani. Meiser is Me'eser. And Me'eser means, like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Yavis in the first chapter, Rabban Gamliel says that Al Tarbe La'aser Umadois, that Meiser may not be like Truma Gedoyla. Truma Gedoyla has to be Mei Oimed. Remember, not could be, must be Mei Oimed. Meiser has to be precise. And therefore, the Braisa explains to you what happens if you didn't do it precise. I'm just quoting the Braisa we had on Daf Mem Gimel. In other words, if you took 9%, just as an example, not 10%, so even though those 9% are misukanim because they belong to the Levi, let's speak about Meiser Rishain, but your paydays are mikul kalim, because since you needed to give 10, right, to be misakin the remainder, when you gave less, the remainder is not mesukan, which means that some of it is tevel. Take, the majority is mesukan, but it's chulin and tevel that are mixed together. And therefore, before the Tanai Beis Din, you cannot eat it. Similarly, says the Braisa, that hama adif al mas roisav, this is big, that if you add, that means let's say you give 11%, so even though the payrois are misukanim, because what remains is good, but the meiser, only 10 is meiser. The 11, that extra percent, you can't call it chulin. Why is it not chulin? Because you put it with the meiser. Chulin is that which remains from the meiser. This became part of the meiser. So also it's called tevel. It's not meiser ishain because al tarbala asaru mothers. And therefore, the Levi, the recipient, has a problem. However, like we had on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, that Rabbi Yossi tells us that as long as a person's error is Beloshen Habraisa ad Mokim Shahadas Noita, which means the person was not grossly off mark, the person did the best that they could. And Nitna Lamalachi Hasharis. We made an effort. As far as I know, I took off 10%. If there's going to be more or less, a Tanai Beis Din, how that works is almost fascinating. It sounds almost like magical. People wonder, how do they do that? What are they doing? What tools, what halachic tools are they using? We didn't even go into those details. But what they did through the Tanai Beis Din is that they readjusted, making sure that listen to these words, if you gave 9%, so before we begin, the Meiser edition is good, right? We said that the remainder is bad. No, the Chachamim said that the other percent from the remainder is Meiser Rishon. Now, I know you got a problem with that because the person has it in there, but at least it's Mesukan. Everything else is Mesukan. Similarly, if you're Ma'adif al Masroisov, so even though Peiros Mesukanim, but before the Tanai Beis Din, we said that Ma'asroisov Mikul Kolim, because there is 11 in there. So the Chazal said that's much easier. The Beis Din says, no, the Levi is getting 10% as Meiser edition, and that which you gave extra is chulin. You gave a gift. Okay, so that is now on that latter part that Hamadif al Masroisov, the Gemara on the top of Daf Mem Daled applied it and worked out. You have to now work out the details. So I'm going to repeat that in a moment. But before I repeat that, before we begin today, Daf Mem Daled on 9 lines, I just want you to know that the rest of the sugya that we'll have up until the new Mishnah on Daf Mem Daled Amud Beis will be the Gemara going through the same steps. So it's going to be a little bit of a review. There'll be a chiddush, but there's going to be a general review. The Mishnah spoke about marking 3%. The Mishnah spoke about Truma Gedoyla and Trumas Meiser. The Braisa explicitly spoke about Chala. I know that the Mishnah also mentioned at the end Chala. Most people take that out of the Girsa, because if you have to deal with Truma Gedoyla, Trumas Meiser, and Chala, you're going to be marking off 5% plus, not 3% of the Mishnah. And the Gemara will go again explaining why you have to go in this roundabout way by first talking about that which you will later leave for Trumas Meiser. Why don't you lechatchila only speak about Truma Gedoyla? The Braisa speaking about Chala says you have to mention first Trumas Meiser. You have to make mention of that which you will leave later for Chala, that you mention first. Then you actually designate Truma Gedoyla first. The Gemara is going to go through the same explanation. So we'll have an opportunity to chazer. And on Daf Mem Daled Amud Beis today, in the new Mishnah in Halacha Gimel, we're going to begin a new series. We're going to begin a new topic. Now we mentioned, and this Mishnah and the following Mishnayisim are based on the rule that Ein Toimin Uma'asrin Min Achayiv Al Aptur Umin Aptur Al Achayiv. And that means that if I have two piles of produce, even if it is of the same type, if one of them has to be tied, let's say Midoraisa, the other one only Midrabanan, Demai, you can't be Toidim Uma'asr from one on the other. I'm not even talking about that by Truma, it has to be Min HaMukav. It's not Negeya now. Maisa Lechatchila doesn't have to be Min HaMukav. Or even from Truma, if you have the two piles together, Min HaMukav, they are gathered together. You may not be Toidim Uma'asr Min Achayiv Al Aptur B'Aptur Al Achayiv. Now, therefore, we already mentioned this, to repeat it, when it comes to the Mai, we mentioned this in Daf Aleph, if the Mai would have been viewed as a bona fide Rabbanon, then if I buy the Mai from Amaretz Aleph, from Chaim, and I buy another produce of the Mai from the Amaretz base, from Yankel, same, I buy wheat and wheat. If we would have viewed the Mai as a normal rabbinic obligation, they are both equally obligated midrabanan, I would have been allowed to be toidim uma'asir from one on the other. But the rule is, and everyone agrees to that one may not. Why? Because the Mai is not stama derabanan. The Mai are the Chachamim telling us that we have a doubt. The doubt is part of the takana. A doubt means, like we keep on mentioning, most of the Amaratzim separated all of the Trumas Umaisis, which means that even though midrabanan I have to always separate at the end Trumas Meiser and Meiser Sheni as a rule from the Mai, we know that. However, I also have to be aware of the fact that it could be that on a biblical level, it's completely fixed because the owner already did everything. I'm only doing it midrabanan. That could be pile from Chaim, could be Yankel. Taka didn't separate the Meisers. So therefore, the obligation of the rabbinic rule of the Mai is somehow a greater obligation. There is a greater chiyuv. Not only a chiyuv midrabanan, but there's a chiyuv midorais because the owner didn't do it. It could be. I know we don't know, but it could be. And therefore, we have the rule that one may not be toidim uma'asir the Mai from that which you bought from one Amaretz over what you bought from another Amaretz. Atkan, not an issue. The question that this Mishnah will begin is, when you buy bread from a baker, if the baker bought his supplies from different Amaratzim, let's say bread number one came from Amaretz number one, bread number two came from the wheat that the baker brought from Amaretz number two, then I can't separate from one on the other. So what is the halachic presumption when you don't know how to clarify it? And all of these doubts, if you have how to be mevared, like ask the baker, find out, do that. I don't know, I can't do that. So do we say that the bread that I bought today and the bread that I bought yesterday from the same baker, the baker got it from the same supplier? Do we say he got it from different suppliers? We're going to have in the Mishnah 3 opinions of Tanoim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. All right, and we're going to begin discussing Shittas Rav Meir as this will get unpackaged. That will be Daf Mem Daled. Now, just to give words, because we mamish left in the middle, is that when the Gemara began to put in application how the Tanai Beis Din fixes the case where a person accidentally gave more meiser than they should have. They didn't give 10%, they gave 11%. So the Gemara gave an example. The example was, and that's also based on another rule that we learned. We always give numbers. Numbers are easy. If I have 100 apples, 100 figs, that's the case, then Ma'aser is 10. Yes and no. I know that Ma'aser is 10 figs, but the truth is that Ma'aser means 10% of the weight of the remainder. And therefore, if the Gemara says, you have figs, let's just separate them into relatively larger ones, relatively smaller ones. They don't weigh the same. Theoretically, when I give Ma'aser, like 50 big, 50 small. So give 5 big, 5 small. Then you gave 10%. Or if they weigh 10 litra, so then you're giving 1 litra. The goal is to give 1 litra. People are not weighing it. No one says you have to weigh it. But that's enough. That's called, because of the T'nai base, then you're not doing it approximation. You're giving 10%. What happens, the Gemara says, when you give 10 big, when you gave 10 big, you gave extra. Because let's say, generally, you should have given 9 big. You gave 10 big. So one, because of the T'nai base, then it's not mikulko. You gave the Levi 10, 9 is Ma'aser, and 1 is a gift, chulin, which he can eat. I got a problem. The Levi doesn't know which one is the chulin. The Levi is going to go ahead. He's going to take from the 10 that he received. He's going to take 1 as Ma'aser and ha-Ma'aser. What happens if the one that he takes is the chulin one? Then the whole thing didn't work. You cannot separate chulin as trumas Ma'aser from Ma'aser Rishon. That's not the way it works. From the Ma'aser Rishon, you take 10% from the Ma'aser Rishon. So the solution for that was the last thing we left off, is Rabbi Bun Bar Kahano says, I'll tell you what happens. When you separate 10 figs big, it's not you. It's as either you have to say mas nevo. Many times, many learn that when the Gemara says mas nevo, the Beis Din already made such a Tanai, whether you said it or not. All right, whether you are aware or not, as long as you don't go against it. That from every fig, we already explained. I'm not going to repeat that part. That you're kivei amakoy when you separate trumas or ma'aser. So you say from every fig, from the stem, as far down as needed, from every fig is Ma'aser Rishon. So I have to give a total of 1 litra. I gave 1.1 litra. So let's just say that around 10% from every fig is extra. It's not that 10 figs are Ma'aser and 1 figs are chulin. No. Every fig has Ma'aser, and you not designate from where? From the uketz as far down as I need, 90% in, 80% in, 99% in, and what is above the 10% total, that is chulin. What did we benefit from that? We benefited a lot, because whichever one you will pick, you the Levi, to give for Trumas Ma'aser, it has, part of it is Ma'aser Rishon, most of it is Ma'aser Rishon. And they're the coin also. What the coin will get will be Truma and a little bit chulin. Nothing wrong with that. But at least that's the way you fix it. That's where we left off. The Gemara has to speak out next step. It's not a repetition. The Gemara's question now, we're up to now inside Daf Mem Daled, 9 lines from the top. Ad Kedoin Davar Meruba. Your solution, the detailed application of the solution works when we began with our example of 100, which means Ma'aser was 10, which means Trumas Ma'aser is a whole fig. Maybe that whole fig is chulin. You gave a good teretz. Every fig has in it Ma'aser Rishon. What happens if you're beginning with 10? I want to work it out. You're beginning with 10. I'm beginning with 10, chavra. So then what was Ma'aser Rishon? 1. But now what does the Levi do? He cuts a shtickle off that 1 as Trumas Ma'aser. So now I'm back to my question. Maybe the piece that he cut off is the chulin piece. But what happens? But if you begin with a small number, for example, Havale, you begin not with 100 figs, but with only 10 figs. And the same scenario, that they're not all of the same size / weight. 5 of them are Rabravin, the Chamesh are Dakikin, excuse me. And therefore, if you're going to give, as now, my sedition, 1 large one, you're giving too much. That's a real Yerushalmi expression. It's good to learn. Hopefully, a couple of years, we'll understand better the words of Yerushalmi. Para sifchar means, says the Marafulda, chaser ma'at, which means that when you give, if you're going to give 1 large, you overgave. You should have given 1 fig minus a bit from that fig. You should have kept some of that fig for you. Okay, so but the problem is min daki kasa. If you're to solve that, you'll give one little one. Then you're not giving enough. You have to give one plus a little bit. Okay. Now again, I know the Gemara never spoke about the application of the Tanai Beis Din when you gave too little. But let me tell you one thing: when you give too little, even though whatever you gave is good for the Levi and then for the Kohen, what you have at the end is you have in your product my sedition. We definitely want to avoid that. It's better than you having a mixture of chulin and tevel, but you don't want to have chulin and my sedition because my sedition doesn't belong to you. So therefore, whenever you're giving this type of imprecision, the Gemara only speaks about you giving too much. Giving too much is good. Give exact, but in the exact, give too much, not too little. So therefore, in our case, if you begin with 10 figs and they're not all the same size, which fig should you give? The bigger fig, dafka. Now the problem is that you're giving too much, which means that in the fig that you gave, before the Tanai Beis Din, it's going to be my sedition and tevel, which is the worst. Tanai Beis Din, it's my sedition and a gift of chulin, which is what happened. So nosav chad min rab ravasa, you give the bigger one. And therefore, because of the Tanai Beis Din, the Levi is not getting a mixture of Nikul Kalam. No, he's getting good. He's getting my sedition and chulin. Istamon kol shu chulin. But now the Gemara is saying that the answer that Rabbi Bun Bar Kahana gave, l'chura, doesn't work over here, which is v'chash loima. Now I have a new chashash. Now that's a kasha. Why are we not choishesh shema oisa chulin oisa trumas ma'aser? That when you're going to cut off, when the Levi will cut off exactly to his best ability, exactly 10% of the fig, to give it to the kohen as trumas ma'aser, maybe he cut the chulin part. And here again, like we had the kasha at the end of yesterday's year, uksiv trumas Hashem has to be ma'aser min ha'ma'aser, not chulin min ha'ma'aser. So the Gemara says, let's go back to kviyos makom. Kviyos makom. Kviyos makom means is that when the Yisrael designated the ma'aser rishon, he didn't just say that this fig is ma'aser rishon. When the Tanai Beis Din adds that if he gave a bit too much, it's not stam, it's ma'aser rishon, and the added is chulin. It's more. It's that the ma'aser rishon is from the stem until where you need. And now that the Levi cuts a piece to give to the kohen, what side will he cut? The closest to the stem. That's the solution. Again, another reason why you're kivei amakim. Beautiful. Amar Rab Abba kar tignaya, that masna ba'omer, either it means you have to actually say it, or it means that the Tanai Beis Din is as if you actually stipulated that the one fig that I'm giving as ma'aser rishon. By the way, the same thing will be with ma'aser sheni, but let's speak about ma'aser rishon. It's not that what's needed is ma'aser rishon and the added is chulin. No, it's more than that. Harehu kavua, I'm fixing a place. Where is the ma'aser rishon in the fig? And we begin from the beginning of the stem. And from there, you're going out to as much as you need. At kam siyamti means that you tell the kohen that at kam siyamti, the trumas, the ma'aser rishon was from the oikets until its siyum, and I took off trumas ma'aser from the oiket side, and therefore you are vadai that what you gave was not chulin min ha'ma'aser but ma'aser min ha'ma'aser. That's it.
So the solution is it's preset ahead of time from where you measure.
That's it. It's preset, and again, al tarab al aser u'madois does not change. You can't be hefker welt. Okay, since there's a Tanai Beis Din, I'm going to give by approximation. You have to make your effort to give exact. By Truma Gedoyla, you may not make an effort to give exact. Okay? And it works. And now, Chazara. It's a Chazara because the Gemara began asking on the Mishnah, why did the Mishnah go on a roundabout way? Then the Gemara quoted the Braisa. The Braisa is more accurate in the sense that the Braisa explicitly, from the beginning, speaks about the issue of challah as well. In other words, you bought bread, and the bread is not the mai. That's the case of the Mishnah and the Braisa. But the Braisa, it's tevel. The case of the Braisa, like, is this halacha base? You bought tevel for whatever reason. The baker told you, Chevra, I did not tithe anything. Nothing was tithe. That means that you, the buyer, now you're going to have to separate everything. However, there's a big difference between Ma'aser Rishon, the 9% that remains. There's a big difference, Ma'aser Sheni, versus that which goes to the coin, which will be Truma Gedoyla, Trumas Ma'aser, and Chala. And because of it having at the end a different status and the higher level of Kedusha, so the first step you do is you make a mark on the bread. If we have to deal with all of it, if you bought the bread from a baker that is Echad mi Arboyim Ushmoina, which is a bit more than 2%, we're going to round off the more. So then the mark is 5%. Because at the end, what will the coin get? The approximate 2% from Truma Gedoyla, the exact 1% of Trumas Ma'aser, and the exact 2 plus a bit from Chal. But again, the Braisa, like the Mishnah, says that you make a mark. You would think that's Balabatim. Speak about Truma Gedoyla, which you have to give first. Then speak about Trumas Ma'aser, which has to come second. Really, you have to speak about Ma'aser Rishon, Trumas, and then speak about Chala. We already explained in the previous studio why that's the right order, and then Ma'aser Sheni. But that's not what it says in the Braisa. The Braisa writes what it says in the Mishnah. First, you speak about that which you will later give for Trumas Ma'aser, 1%. Then you say, listen, in this side of the mark, there's also that which will later be designated for Chala. And you have to say 1 of 48, which is 2 plus exact. And now, that which remains, I'm designating for Truma Gedoyla. So if you speak about Ma'aser, why don't you just designate it? That's the kasha. Same thing that you begin the 100, which is Bitzad and the side of the mark, which will end up going to the Kohen. You're making a declaration that this 1% right now, I'm not going to change it. I'm leaving it chulin. Chulin is not chulin. So the Braisa is more elaborate than Mishnah. Chulin means that it's the way it is. What is everything here? Tevel. Chulin means tevel. Chulin, which is tevel. So, Frek Gemara, if you are beginning to speak about that 1%, which will ultimately be the Trumas Ma'aser, so why don't we Yomer Harei Hu B'Tzadze Ma'aser? Why didn't you Lachatchila designate it already for Ma'aser? So the Gemara says we had these same words before. That you can't do. Why not? Because Nimsa Magdim. Because if you actually designate it as Ma'aser Rishon, then you gave Ma'aser Rishon before Truma Gedoyla. And you're going against, it's a law, you violated the law. Melayoscha v'deimacha, Pashas Mishpatim. Melayoscha means you're bikurim. For those of us who are learning Rambam, we just learned this in the Rambam yesterday, Hilchas bikurim. Melayoscha, bikurim, look in Chumachitas. V'deimacha means truma loisa acher. Don't mix up the order. And it's not only that truma comes after bikurim. The loisa acher means that all of the trumas from Ma'aser have to follow the correct order. So you can't give Ma'aser Rishon Trumas Ma'aser before Truma Gedoyla. Okay, so now the kasha is v'yomer. We're at the end of Daf Mem Daled Hadei Hu B'Tzad Zeh Truma. Why don't you begin speaking about the 2%, right? The 2 of 100ths, the 2% that's within the side of the mark that ultimately will be cut to be given to the kohen. So designate the 2% to the kohen. So the Gemara says Daf Mem Daled Amid Beis Chazara. If I say 2%, you know what I'm doing wrong? I am giving truma. I'm giving truma exact. I'm not allowed to give truma exact. I can't say 2% because 2% from 100 is exact. The echad mechamishin, and you're not allowed to give exact. Gavaldik. So what you do is you speak about the exact amount you're going to need for the Ma'aser. You speak then the exact amount you need for the Chala. The Chala is exact, 1 from 48. What remains is approximation. Because when you make a mark, even when you aim the 5%, you never get exact 5%. You understand? No, if I'm going to, that's beautiful. A mark is off. I want for the imprecision to go on the Truma. So if I'm going to speak about Truma first, and the 2% will be exact 2%, then the imprecision will be in that which remains after the 2%. So the imprecision will go to the Ma'aser Rishon, to the Chala, which is what we may not do. So that's the only solution. Answers the Gemara, top of Daf Mem Daled. No, if you're going to actually designate the Truma Gedoyla as 2% from within the mark, Nimtza, oy poiches ala Truma, oy moisev ala Truma, all right, which is something you're not allowed to do. I'm talking about the word Truma over here, just to know, it goes on Maisim and Amaisim. If you're going to give Truma exact, so the Maiserishin will be imprecise. And if the Maiserishin is imprecise, then the Maisim and Hamaisim will be imprecise. This Truma, I know it's a play on words, this Truma is Trumas Maisim. Trumas Maisim has to be exact. Because Trumas Maisim is called Maisim and Hamaisim. Truma Gedoyla has to be imprecise. Truma Gedoyla may oimed. Trumas Maiser not may oimed.
I lost you. How by me giving words to the Maiser Rishon, the exact Maiser Rishon, Chala v'chule, will help to stay not exact on Truma Gedoyla.
And the opposite. How I'll tell you. When you mark, because the Seder of the Mishnah of the Braisa and Halacha Lamaisa now in the Holy Land is that I separated it when I was by Rabbi Herzl. Is you make a mark on that which you're going to be Torah Mamasa. You make a mark. When you make a mark, you never make the mark exact. So the Mishnah says make a mark 5% in. You got it, Yakir. It's not going to be exactly 5%. It's going to be a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit. If I'm going to say now that from the marked area, 2% Truma Gedoyla. So then when I said those words, I'm going to be Magdish. I'm going to uplift to 2%, which is what I'm not allowed to do. And it's not only, you see, the emphasis isn't only that I'm going to be giving the Truma exact. It ruins everything else, because what remains won't be 3%, will be around 3%, which means the Maiser Rishon will be around. And then the Trumas Maiser will later be around. So you're ruining it. Nimsa oy poiches, the word Truma means Trumas Maiser. Oy moisev al ha-Truma means Trumas Maiser. So what's the solution? Solution is, since you first say that the exactly 1%, I'm leaving it the way it is, which is chulin, which really means tevel, right? And what the Gemara doesn't say, but the chulin, that's the whole chiddush. We're not repeating, because really chala, you look inside the words of the Baraisa. And then when you say, because you say the 1% from this side will be my sedition, part of the my sedition, later will become Trumas Maisim. Then you say Echod Mishmoinim mi'arboim u'shmoina. You say that, which is exact. Chala has to be exact. 1 of 48 from a nachtoin is later going to be designated for Chala. You can't designate it now. You're going out of the order. So now what remains within the mark is more or less 2%. Perfect. Now you're magdish it. So now the word Truma here is Truma Gedoyla. One second, I just had to play in the words. That's why it's hard to chop it. Oh, now, when you give the Truma Gedoyla, you'll do it the way you should, which is either you'll be poiches from the 2%, and not Truma Gedoyla, or moisiv on the Truma Gedoyla, and ein bekachlum. Ein bekachlum is mashma that you're not doing anything wrong. I know I'm emphasizing that you have to give it by estimation, but that's the lashon of the Gemara over.
Okay, is there an issue with the order? Meaning, because it does come out, at least that it seems like we're allocating Meiser and Trumas Meiser before Truma, which
allocating is not giving. The U.S. government allocated a lot of help to Israel. Doesn't mean they're giving it. They allocated it. Many people allocated a lot of money for the shul. It doesn't mean I can pay my bills. No, it's separate things. Exactly, allocating. Allocating is not a problem. That's the solution. You can allocate. But you're not doing magdish.
So the way to conceptualize it is you're allocating this section, and all right, you're going in order of whatever Meiser, and then Trumas Meiser, and then I guess Chala, and then Truma Gedoyla.
Very good.
But you're saying that it should actually happen that the part that is allocated for Truma Gedoyla happens first.
Guys, first of all, just Asherenu, look how old we are. We're old people here, relatively, and this is the first time we're learning this. We didn't learn this in the Rambam. That's the beauty. We're learning new things. It's very exciting. You learn Talmud Bavli, you heard everything already. I'm telling you, you forgot. Most of us. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're learning. That allocating is not sanctifying, and that's a Gavaldik Seder. You allocate, you don't sanctify, then you do the right order, and that which remains is Truma Gedoyla. Perfect, works.
Rabbi, would it be correct to say that this concept of Tanai Beis Din had to exist since Matan Torah?
I agree with what
Like,
Danny's saying. I agree with
how
what Danny
else?
is saying.
How else does it work?
I agree with Danny, and I would add that it goes on. Yeah, anything that needs a measurement, where it has to be exact. Yeah. When we daven Maidiv over here, we davening Maidiv Bisman, the Tanai Beis Din. Like, think about it. Anything that has to be done precise, we're not precise. We're human beings. Nothing is precise by us. So, Tanai Beis Din. Moshe Rabbeinu split the barrel of the blood over there in Chumash. So a malach came and split it in half. Kachatzois, bachatzois. Okay, very good. Okay. So, guys, we already spoke out the intro to the new Mishnah. And this is a series. This is a new topic based on the premise. I buy my, from two different suppliers, from two different amaratzim. Amei ha'aretz, that's the right word. We don't say that they're equally obligated, even though they are. But they're not. Because maybe one Taka gave everything. Then what I'm doing is only midrabanan. The other one maybe did not give. So what I'm doing is that the rabbanan and the da'iraisa. In other words, every supplier is different. So when you buy from a baker, do we say maybe what the baker is selling today, he bought from one supplier? Now, what I'm saying right now, these questions, they change with the time. Because I don't know, it's a different world today. Maybe a baker today would buy every day from different suppliers. Maybe. I'm just saying as a maybe. We're speaking about then. Because it's almost like a metzias. Rav Meir holds that a baker buys from the same supplier. It's a halachic rule. Not forever, but within 30 days. You'll see in the Gemara details. So let's read it inside. Now, there's one other detail that I didn't speak out in the introduction that, according to some, is being alluded to in the Mishnah. Everyone agrees to that you cannot. What about minhara ala yafa min ayafa alana? What about that? So I want you to know that Rabbi Eloi is of the opinion that even though lechatchila you shouldn't give from better quality, from worse quality on better quality, from bad quality on you shouldn't. But if you did it, b'diavad it's good. Based on that, by derabanan, by demai, you can do it lechatchila. That's going to be another detail that will be mentioned in the Mishnah. When it comes to bread, so there's hot bread and cold bread. They mean two things. Hot bread means it was baked today. Cold bread means it was baked yesterday. So there's two parts to the issue. The issue is, number one, maybe the baker yesterday got the wheat, got the flour from another supplier. Maybe today he got it from a different supplier. All right? No one is, in the Mishnah, no one is worried on the same day. It's today to yesterday. There's another issue that if I bought 2 loaves of bread, again, when I have to take off whatever I have to take off, can I take off from the cold on the warm? So the Levi is going to get a day old bread. So we'll see in the Mishnah, since the issue is the Mai, lechatchila, that's not an issue. You could give from worse quality and better quality. The problem will be is maybe he got it from another supplier. And there's another part. What happens if the bread that you buy from a baker, they are in different shapes? That means they were made in different forms. Do we say that if a baker has 2 different forms, 2 different breads, maybe that means that the raw material came from 2 different suppliers, or not? Okay, let's read it on side. It says the Mishnah, you're buying bread from a baker. And guys, I just want to repeat one final time, because I know that my son mentioned this in the beginning and we already went through this. It's a little bit more complicated, but we had this before in the Masechta. Either these Mishnayos are speaking about where the baker is an Amaretz, that's why there's an issue. People ask, what's the issue? When you buy bread from the baker, it's kosher. That kosher means he did everything. No. Either the baker is an Amaretz, or the baker could be a Chaver. That's the way we solve the Tuma issue. But because of the baker being a wholesaler, So we say that wholesalers buy these staple foods because of the governmental impositions of price. They made such little profit that they did not need to be. They bought the raw material from an Amaretz. They brought the wheat from an Amaretz. It's the Mai. But in this case, they are not the ones that are chayiv to do it. The buyer. And the fact is, we'll see in the Mishnah also, that he didn't separate challah for whatever reason. So the buyer is separating challah. So let's go. So first of all, before we speak about the challah part, let's first speak about the Mai issue. Now, what do we have to separate by the Mai? I know the last sugi was about everything, Truma Gedola, but the Yakir just jumped on recently. The Mai, you don't separate Truma Gedola. The Mai, you don't even give away Mai Sedishan. You only designate Mai Sedishan, you de facto only give away by the Mai. Trumas Maiser and Maiser Shem. So says the Mishnah, Ma'aser is going to mean the Trumas Maiser. This is Rab Meir, the first sheet in the Mishnah. You could be Ma'aser. Minachama ala tzenenes uminan tzenenes alachama. Hot loaves, cold loaves, hot loaves. Says the Maharaful. The guys, keep your finger in the Mishnah and look on the Maharaful, the 6 lines from the top. Right in the beginning of the narrow lines, what will be the issue? Cold and hot. So there, no, that's one part of what Rav Meir is teaching you. It's not a problem, and you can do so lechatchila. Why? Because number one, Rabbi Meir holds ki Rabbi Eloi, the Amar, and he's quoting Bavli Yavamis Peites, that even by Tevel, not by Demai, even when you have to, but the evidence good. If you did it, truma say truma, and it means everything. Truma is truma, ma'aser is ma'aser. So based on that shita, we now say that ubidemai, not the lashon over there of hatoyre min hora. If you did it, here is ma'aser. L'chatchila, you can do it. Keep your finger in the marafot. Now the next case is to make it even clearer, because a side of the issue is the issue of the supplier. Afilu mi. It's a test. Some people have it with a dalid. The word form is, we pronounce it defus. Here it's with a test, but it means molds. Afilu midefusim harbe, even if it comes from different molds, and therefore what? Keep your fingers in the Mishnah. Look inside the Marafulda. Afilu midefusim harbe. V'loi chayshinan shema esmoil. Maybe yesterday he bought it from an Amoritz that really did not give everything. And different forms would mean then. I know people are thinking, does it mean that now? I don't know. Then it could have meant he got it from a different supplier. So it's different. It looks different. And today it's different shape. Well, that is ma'aseh. And even though they're both obligated as the Mai, nevertheless, it's not on the same level. And if that would be the case, so that would be the chashash. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is that what? That you don't have a problem. You could separate cold and hot, this shape and that shape. Divrei Rabbi Meir. I'm just going to read the final words in the Marafulda. Why? Because the Nachtoim, because that's the Rav Meir Shita is that a baker, Mechad Gabra Zovin. That's the halachic presumption. He buys his raw material. We're speaking about the grains from one supplier. Only
Rabbi Meir, or this is everyone?
Only Rabbi Meir. Even though it's in different forms, guys, don't be shocked. Just get used to the logic then. Even though that bakers then, maybe today, for sure then, making breads in different forms could have indicated, because it came from different suppliers, that Meir is saying a chiddush. That halachically, you don't have to be concerned about that. Since it came from the same supplier, l'chatchila, you can be treidem or ma'aser. In the Gemara, I got ahead of me. That was in my words of introduction. Very good. Okay, just a lot is saying, I added by the introduction 30 days because Rav Meir is not saying that a baker will only buy from one supplier. We don't say that. I think what Rav Meir is saying is that a baker buys a quantity that will last for around 30 days. Now, you don't know whether you're buying it on day number one. It doesn't matter. We'll see in the Gemara. We'll speak it out. You don't know that. You don't have to be chayish that much. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda argues, right? Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. They are the two. Rabbi Yehuda Oyser. And by the way, Oyser is not only from different... okay, first of all, Rabbi Yehuda is not speaking about forms. The Gemara is going to ask, what will Rabbi Yehuda hold by different forms? Rabbi Yehuda's disagreement explicitly is hot cold, because hot cold more than forms is a proof today, yesterday. So every day you buy from a different supplier, or maybe not you do. Maybe you got from a different supplier, and maybe one supplier really was Tairim Ma'asid, and maybe the other didn't.
All right, challah gets cold in. Sorry, the challah is going to get cold in 2 hours, not yesterday.
Maybe when you bought it, and maybe a baker only baked once, and maybe you bought it only in the morning, gave him. And I agree with what you're saying.
I know like in Russia, you always bought bread.
Vlad is saying in Russia, I know in Brazil, you only bought it in the morning when they made it. Danny had something to say.
No, the point is hot means today's bread, and cold is yesterday's bread.
So Kevin just asked. Kevin says it's not. It's not that we're saying that if I buy bread 9 hours after it was baked, I go today to Schwartz Bakery. They baked it this morning. If I'm going to go there 5 p.m., it's going to be cold. Emes, fine. I have to be suspect to. Chitem Shalamesh was bought by the baker from one Am Ha'aretz supplier. The Shel Hayoim, the hot bread that is from today, maybe today, Shel Echad, he bought it from Echad, means from another supplier. And now I'm trading with Ma'asim min aptur al achiyuv, min achiv al aptur. And again, why didn't Rabbi Yehuda speak about the different forms? We will leave that, God willing, to the end of Daf Mem Hema Beis. Next, tomorrow we're going to learn about it. Rab Shimon Oiser. Now it sounds like Rab Shimon is siding with Rabbi Yehuda. We will see in the Gemara that he's actually more machmer than Rabbi Yehuda on one hand. So we'll leave that. How is it shaykh more? Wait until the Gemara. And now he brings in something that no one spoke about, and that is challah. See, challah is a whole different thing. Guys, what is machayev? What triggers the challah obligation? We keep on speaking it. The kneading. Even if you buy wheat from different amei haaretz, even the challah obligation is the same. I'm not talking about, doesn't matter whether, I'm not talking about tevel, we're speaking about challah. The chiyuv of challah means if you didn't separate challah, it's bona fide tevel for challah. So Rab Shimon umatir b'challah, because the baker is the one that did it, and the baker is the same baker. And let's go, even if you're chayish, whether he separated challah or not, even if it's only a chashash, it's the same chashash. That's gavaldik. And now we get beautiful. Now, do the other Tanoim disagree? We'll see all in the Gemara. That's a typical Mishnah that has to be unpackaged. Yeah,
I'm not understanding something. With challah, it has to be one dough. If you bought bread yesterday and bread today, that's clearly not from the same dough.
I know that, Danny, but let's speak about a case where we don't know whether the baker was mafresh challah. I'm buying it from the same baker. So the chiyuv is the same. I have to separate challah. I have the same doubt whether the baker separated or did not. Simple. Makes no difference whether he got it from different suppliers or not. The chiyuv or the doubt of the chiyuv, either if the baker told me he did not separate, or if the baker told me he separated challah, but I don't trust him. We didn't work that out yet. Whatever the chiyuv is, v'negei challah, it's coming from the same baker. Doesn't make a difference at all whether you get it from different suppliers. Now let's just finish the Amid until the two dots.
What's the point of saying needed?
Needed.
Yeah, isn't the other stuff that was yesterday and today also needed?
Yeah, but the chiyuv of Meiser has nothing to do with its kneading. It's nothing to do with its baking. The chiyuv of Trumas or Meiser has to do with the Meruach. No, I don't do it. The chiyuv was chal a long time ago. A whole different chiyuv. Now, ad heichon, this kasha is only on Avmeir. Yud Avmeir says that we can halachically say michad gabra zavin. Ad heichon means, come on, a baker only buys the wheat from the same supplier. It's not true. You can be loyal, but you have to buy from different suppliers. And indeed, says the Gemara that Talmudoi Shel Rabbi Chia quoted in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi that even according to Rav Meir, it's Ad Shloshim Yom. Ad Shloshim Yom l'chu'ura would mean that we presume that when the baker buys raw material, he buys his needs for 30 days. Now, I don't know what day he bought. Halachically, I don't need to know. It goes by when I bought. I'll speak it out by adding one more thing, then I'll speak the whole thing out. Ad Shloshim Yom is Ad v'loy Ad Bechlal. Today is Yud Menachemot. All right. If I buy a dough of bread on Yud, and I think the Chodesh has Lamed Yom, I think there's 2 days Rosh Chodesh Elul. Not I think there's 2 days Rosh Chodesh Elul. So when is 30 days from today? Tes Elul. Oh my God, Elul. Yeah. So if you bought bread today and you bought bread Tes Elul, then even if Meir holds, you can't be mafresh one on the other because it's already 30 days apart. It has to be within 30 days. Let's read it inside. Meaning, we only quoted the Rabbi Shua by saying the words ad shloishim yoim hey chavida lakachamenu betchila shloishim. It goes when you bought it. I don't know when the baker bought the wheat. I don't need to know. We don't have to go that far. If I bought today, so just as an example, if there is a month of 30 days, which is Menachem Av, if I bought bread from the baker on the first day of Menachem Av, ube'emtza, and I bought bread Tesvav, Tu B'Av, and then I bought it on the first day of Chodesh, on the 30th day. So he says like this: I can bring now how the bread is fresh. Why is it not moldy? I do kasher for myself. It's pita bread. It's good. You put it in the freezer. You can be trained ma'as. You take up the trumas mais, the mais separations from what you bought on the first with the 15th. You can take the sheni what you bought on the 15th with the one that you bought on the 30th. Minachadu. But rishon agabe shlishi shnei minamein.